First story. Hi, my name is Jack. I grew up on a farm in the Ohio countryside, and I have always loved the silence and tranquility of the countryside. I think that is why that event made such an impression on me. I was 15 at the time, and as usual, I was helping my parents take care of the animals. That night, I was in the barn, making sure all the doors were securely locked and that the animals were safe for the night. It was around 9 o'clock at night, and the sky was clear, with thousands of stars visible. That was when I noticed a bright light that seemed to be coming from the cornfield next to the barn. At first, I thought it was a tractor or some other farm equipment, but the light was different, brighter and whiter. I left the barn and, when I looked up, I saw an object that stopped me in my tracks. It was a silver disc, floating silently in the sky, about 50 meters above the ground. The object emitted a bright light that illuminated the entire area around it, making the night seem like day. The strangest thing was the absolute silence. There was no sound of engines, nothing. Just the sound of crickets and the soft wind in the fields. I stood there, staring at the thing. I was alone, and a chill ran down my spine. The disc didn't move, it just hovered there, as if it were watching. I began to feel a mixture of fear and curiosity. What could it be? An experimental plane? But then, why wasn't it making any noise? After a few minutes, which seemed like hours, the disc began to move slowly upward. It rose slowly, straight up, and then suddenly accelerated, disappearing into the night sky in a matter of seconds. I ran inside the house, shaking with excitement and fear. I told my parents what I had seen, but they thought I was imagining it or some daydream. That night, I could hardly sleep. I kept looking out my bedroom window, hoping to see the light again. But it never came back. The next day I went to the field where the disc was floating, but there was no mark or sign that anything had been there. Still, I have never forgotten what I saw. To this day, I wonder what really happened that night and if I will ever find an explanation. Second story. Hi, my name is Lily, and I grew up on a farm in the heart of Montana. I have always loved the wide-open landscapes and the starry skies that seem to stretch on forever. That night, however, what I saw in the sky was anything but ordinary. It was a summer night, and I was outside, sitting on the porch with a cup of tea, just stargazing. The sky was clear and clear, perfect for observing constellations. I have always enjoyed trying to identify planets and stars, so I was totally absorbed in this. Suddenly, something different caught my attention. There was a group of red lights in the sky, arranged in a perfect triangle. I was intrigued because they were lower than airplanes usually fly and much brighter than any star. I thought it might be some kind of drone, but the shape and behavior of the lights were unlike any drone I had ever seen. The lights remained still for a few minutes, which gave me time to call my sister, who was inside the house. She came over quickly and was also perplexed by what we were seeing. The lights began to move in sync, slowly at first, as if they were scanning the area. After a while, they began to move faster, but always maintaining a triangular formation. The strangest thing was the silence. There was no sound of engines, nothing but the chirping of crickets and the gentle wind in the trees. Then the lights accelerated abruptly and disappeared in the blink of an eye, as if they had never been there. We stood there, open-mouthed, trying to understand what had just happened. We ran inside and told our parents, who listened to us skeptically. My father tried to explain it by saying that it could have been some kind of military exercise or perhaps an atmospheric phenomenon, but nothing seemed to quite fit with what we had seen. For the next few days, my sister and I became obsessed, searching for news of similar sightings in the area, but we found nothing. The only thing we did learn was that other people in different parts of the state had reported seeing strange lights in the sky that same night. To this day, that incident remains unexplained. I continue to watch the sky with a little hope and a lot of curiosity, hoping to perhaps see those lights again. What were they? Where did they come from? These are questions I still cannot answer, but I know I saw something that is beyond our common understanding. Third story. Hi, I'm Trevor. This story took place a few years ago on our farm in Texas. I've always loved thunderstorms, and tonight was shaping up to be a good one. The clouds were heavy and the wind was blowing hard, setting the stage for a big storm. I was standing on the porch, watching the rain come, something that always brought me a sense of peace. Suddenly, during a flash of lightning, I noticed a very bright blue light on the horizon. At first, I thought it was just a particularly bright flash of lightning, but the light stayed on for longer than usual, shining brightly in the sky. My curiosity was immediately piqued, and I stood there, staring at the light, trying to figure out what it was. As the light began to move, I realized that it wasn't lightning or anything natural. It seemed to be emitting from an object that was moving slowly toward our farm field. The object was dark and had a shape that I couldn't clearly make out due to the rain and darkness, but it was large and silent. The blue light seemed to pulse, illuminating the field below. I stood there, stunned, not knowing what to do. The object slowly descended into the field and seemed to hover over the ground for a few minutes. I remember feeling a mix of fear and fascination. The rain continued to fall, and the blue light reflected off the drops, creating a surreal effect. Suddenly, the object began to rise rapidly and, in a matter of seconds, disappeared into the sky, leaving only the sound of the rain. When it was all over, I stood there for a while, processing what I had just seen. I ran back into the house and told my wife, who was in the kitchen. She was surprised but a little skeptical, suggesting that perhaps I had seen some kind of drone or helicopter. But something inside me told me that it was different, something that I couldn't explain. The next day, early in the morning, I went to the field where the object had hovered. The ground was soaked from the rain, but there were strange marks, like burnt circles in the grass. I was even more intrigued, but I didn't know who to tell or what to do with this information. To this day, I have no clear explanation for what I saw. There were no other reports in the area, and no one seemed to have seen or heard anything that night. It was an experience that left me with more questions than answers. Are we alone? What was it that hovered over our farm that rainy night? These are questions that, for now, remain unanswered. Fourth story. Hi, I'm Hannah, and I grew up on a small farm in Kansas. My childhood was filled with memories of long days spent outdoors, playing in the fields and caring for animals. But one night, something happened that completely changed my view of the world. I was 16 years old and was riding my bike home after visiting a friend. It was a clear, calm night, with a full moon lighting the way. I enjoyed these nighttime rides, enjoying the peace and quiet of the countryside. Suddenly, as I was cycling along a dirt road that cut through the cornfields, I noticed a bright light in the sky. At first, I thought it was an airplane, but I soon realized that it wasn't moving like one. The light was much brighter and low on the horizon. I stopped my bike to take a closer look, trying to understand what I was seeing. The light began to move slowly toward me. My heart raced, but I was too curious to run away. The object, now visible as a bright disk, was hovering over the cornfields, not far from where I was. It was silent, it made no sound, which made it all the more surreal. The disk remained there, floating, for a few minutes. I could see that it had a soft glow and a smooth, almost metallic surface. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was alone, in the middle of a field, with a strange object hovering in the sky in front of me. Suddenly, the disk began to rise slowly and then accelerated into the sky, disappearing in seconds. I stood there in shock, trying to process what had just happened. I got on my bike and pedaled as fast as I could home, my adrenaline pumping. When I got home, I told my parents everything, but they thought I was exaggerating or that I had seen something I didn't understand, like a weather balloon or some modern farm equipment. But I knew what I had seen, and it was completely unconventional. In the days that followed, I became obsessed, researching UFO sightings and similar phenomena. I found accounts of people who described similar things, but no one in our area had seen anything that night. I was afraid to tell anyone, fearing that they would think I was making things up. To this day, that silent encounter intrigues me. I have never been able to find a satisfactory explanation for what I saw. I only know that night, something I could not understand was there, flying over the cornfields of our farm. And that left me with a feeling that the world is much more mysterious and vast than we imagine.